Thank you for everyone that's shown up this evening to be part of this artist talk and dialogue with Leah Craig. Um, so just to get us started, I want to give a really quick introduction into um, a little bit more about WEAD and our land acknowledgements, both with WEAD and the gallery here in Chickamauga, Georgia. And then I'll introduce Leah Craig with us. So, um, oh, Priscilla, she's coming. Hi, Priscilla. Awesome. That's one of our artists in the show as well. Um, so to get us started, a little bit about WEAD, Women Eco Artist Dialogue. So many of you are members or supporters, so thank you. Um, Women Eco Artist Dialogue was founded in 1996. WEAD is volunteer and I would say also artist run. A cohort of female identifying visual artists, writers, curators, and historians, researchers, scientists, and others committed to highlighting the intersections of art and ecological issues. Something that's really near and dear to my heart as well. It's one of the reasons I joined as a member and now on the board, and I was on the exhibitions committee before that as well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to also highlight that this project, the Bodies and Borders of Ecologies of Consent, is in collaboration with WEAD and the physical gallery at the 109 in Chickamauga, Georgia. And then I also want to thank our supporters, the California Council for the Arts, the Alameda County Commission for the Arts, the City of Berkeley Civic Arts, and Blick Art Supplies. We really want to appreciate our supporters, our sponsors that really help all of these things come together in a fiscal way, and also just sharing about our story and mission. So also before we begin, we're going to start with our land acknowledgement with WEAD. So the office is located in Berkeley, California, uh, and it sits on the territory of the Huashin, pronounced Hawaiian, I think, the ancestral and unceded land of the Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. This land was also, it continues to be a great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe who are campaigning for federal recognition. Also, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone. We are researching and revitalizing and preserving Ramaytush Ohlone history and culture and the Confederate villages of Lasayan and Sorgrati Land Trust, who are working to return the native land back to Indigenous stewardship. Land acknowledgement really quickly for Chickamauga, Georgia, where I am positioned right now in rural Georgia. We are a big part of the Trail of Tears that come through this region historically. There is a lot of rich history ongoing here, contemporary voices. Um, and this land acknowledgement was co-written with the Cherokee community and tribes here. So this is how they want to be represented in this region, and these are their words that I'm sharing with you today. So acknowledgement of the tribes, people, community histories, and contemporary realities of those whose land this gallery and projects situate upon. Chickamauga, Georgia, land of the Cherokee East, the Asachoni and Yuchi and Mesquite tribes, and then also our partnership community, Chattanooga, Tennessee, also land of the Chickamauga East and Cherokee East, and the Yuchi and Mesquite tribes. And then also there's an excerpt here. I'll put it in our chat if anyone's interested. But support the Native American Rights Foundation that helps tribes to safeguard their land rights, water rights, hunting, fishing, and gathering rights, also resources rights and environmental rights. I'm going to put that right in our chat if anybody wants to look at that. So, Leah, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about your work. The first time I saw it, um, when we were going through the curation and selection process, it was really difficult. So much amazing work came through on this topic. Um, and personally, I've gone down a deep rabbit trail in research, kind of in a adjacent to some of the research and projects that you're doing. So I'm just really thankful that you're a part of this project and exhibition. So everybody, Leah Craig, who's going to be doing the artist talk and dialogue with us today, an interdisciplinary artist and educator based out of the Cambridge, Massachusetts area, whose work is examining the intersections of public space, representation of environmental justice. Also, she teaches visual and critical studies at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, inviting students to look closely at how systems of power shape public spaces, how we engage with those spaces, as well as our cultural expressions in those kind of spaces, both publicly and internally, our relationships with the environment through intersectional lens. Her artistic practice spans installation, drawing, and fiber arts, using methods grounded in care and intention, which is something deep to my heart as well. Exploring how humans can relate to the more than human world through participatory and site-specific interventions and activations. I find her work also to be, it offers a playful prompt, challenging these dominative narratives that we might have with otherness and fostering community dialogue. Also imagining the possibility of multi-species justice and what that might look like, especially with your pieces with knotweed, taking something that could be almost put in a negative lens of invasive speciesness and what could that look like through the lens of care. Um, Leah studied at the Tufts University, the Museum School, and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Um, and there's more to say. Please check out her website as well. Check out the project she's been a part of and is leading into exploring. And I'm just gonna hand that over, um, I think now to Leah, a little Zoom housekeeping, just real quick. I'm going through, this is recorded. We'll have a Q&A towards the end. Please keep your audio muted. And then when we kind of start to close out and go into the Q&A, please feel free to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable, just so we can have that face-to-face communal aspect. You're welcome to put questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll try and get to as many of you as we can. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Leah. And it is such a thrill to be a part of this. It's an honor to be a part of this show. This is an incredible group of artists, thinkers, poets, and I I am so happy to be in this company. And I just really appreciate Leah Dalton, all the work you've done to organize this, and Mary, thank you. All the other folks at WEAD, I know you're doing this on a volunteer basis, and it's just been amazing to see what you've pulled together. So, as Leah said, I'm calling in from Cambridge, Massachusetts. So located on the traditional lands of ancestral land of the Massachusetts people, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some work that has through lines that tie in with this exhibition. When I saw the call for art, oh, it's Maggie. Let's admit Maggie. I was so excited to see that just the curatorial statements are really incredible in talking about borders and thresholds and thinking about borders between life and death. Elvia Wilk and Kim Tallbear were quoted, and I happen to be working with Knotweed, and here, let's move along and actually look at some images while I talk to you. I'm working with a plant that is a part of my piece that's in this show. But I've also been thinking about boundaries, thresholds, um, and these liminal spaces in several of my projects. So what I've done is I'm just going to present tonight um, work that kind of connects with this thread of thresholds. So we'll start here. It's a piece called "In Progress: Performing Grief." This was a piece that I created. Um, I co-created with participants from the public. So this was in a gallery space. It was a 6 hour durational performance, and the materials were some burial cloth that was donated from a place in Portland, Oregon. It was an organic burial cloth. I love the idea of returning to the earth and not having the barrier of something like a casket or the embalming fluid. And I understand that those practices do happen in parts of the country. They don't happen here just yet, so there's no spot for me to buy the burial cloth here. But I found someone who donated a bunch of scraps from their organic burial cloth. Um, I also have my hair and the clothing that I was wearing were a really important part of this piece. Here's a copper tube loom. So I work with fiber art. I love to weave. This is a simple weaving technique I was using. And I built the loom to approximate the body of my father. And he's who I was recently, or I had recently lost. And so that was kind of the impetus for thinking deeply about the performance of grief or mourning. Um, I also, let's see, so what we're looking at is the loom that I created that approximates my dad's body. There's the little platform that I built and sat on, and the 6 hours was meaningful. It was I got to sit with my father for 6 hours prior to his passing, and I got to be present and witness that transitional moment. And on the hospital door, there was a sign that said, "In progress, life transition in progress," is what it said, and that is the jumping off point for. I mean, that really shaped this piece. And what I did is I invited folks to come in and provided scissors and invited them to cut a little scrap of clothing or hair from me, from my person, and then to attach those to the wall and then to write something about their experience with grief. And so the way I'm looking at this, I'm thinking of this as a way that I was really exploring this transition between life and death, the sort of collapse of the boundary between life and death. And this is actually, let's go on to this next one. And you can see the artifacts from my body that are on the wall and the writing that people um, shared to this piece. And that I think is another sort of transitional boundary crossing, if you will. There were parts of this that were a very private grief, and by taking these parts from my person, from my hair, from my clothing, and making something new, turning those into a kind of sacred object, kind of a vessel for ritual. This, I think of this as being a sort of a threshold piece as well. And so people wrote about their experiences with grief, and I went around and gathered the hair and the clothing scraps and wove them into this loom, into the weaving. And in the end, I have this, as you can see, a tapestry that is kind of an analog of my father's body. So it's meant to be kind of a stand-in, but it's also something that is no longer about my private grief. And it's not just my piece. It's something that has become more public and that many people have shared in. And so I'm also thinking about this piece and the way that there's the through line here being the private to public. We're all entangled. We're sharing in this experience of mourning, and we're also in a gallery space. So that's the last piece that I'll mention. We're in a gallery space where we might one wouldn't expect to turn, to have it be a place where you might encounter an invitation to be so vulnerable. And I was interested in that, like how can we turn this space into something a little more sacred? So playing with boundaries in these ways. Okay, I have a very short video here that is doing some of the same things, I think, thematically, dealing with boundaries. So this piece is circulatory system. It's really short. I guess a content warning, just the audio is of a life support machine. And so if that's something that might open things up for you, just be aware that that's coming. But I'll play this here. It's very short. The audio working.
Yes, it's working.
Great, thank you. So this is a short piece that when I showed it, it was just continuously on loop. Here I'm thinking about the ocean kind of breathing in sync with the life support machine. So in the split screen video, the seawater is paired with bodily fluids that, as you can see, are suspended in medical tubing. And in this way, I'm thinking of this as tracing an entanglement of bodies and water and the threshold between life and death. Just a quick note, someone that I'm really inspired by these days, Stacey Alaimo. I read, she was referencing someone else's quote, but she was talking about how every third breath that we breathe, that oxygen comes from the ocean. And so I think that level of interconnectedness that we as humans have with these parts of the natural world is just really, really profound. All right, so I have another one. I'll play it here. This one just has ambient ocean sound, so I'll go ahead and keep talking about this while it plays. So this is another, I don't know if I mentioned that the last one I consider a tubescape. So I made these little short videos I called tubescapes. And here, this one's Beach Crawl, and it was performed while I was both grieving a loved one and also newly pregnant. So Beach Crawl here features, as you can see, another tube. It's a clear plastic tube that becomes a liminal subject, kind of a threshold in and of itself, and its surface moving and yielding in response to the wind, the water, the sand, and the presence of my own body. So like with the other one, I'm exploring cycles of life and mortality through material and bodily encounters. And I think this one just, again, like thinking about boundaries and borders between life and death, this was both for me. It was something of a a way of embodying or getting my body into a space that kind of functions as like a birth canal in a way, and but also a passage beyond life. So you see the figure above kind of washed away. Okay. So now I'm going to share these little drawings that I did that um, I'll just talk about them. My notes are kind of jumbled, but these are drawings of myself. These are me and my first born child. I am a parent to two children, and this I drew these during the COVID lockdown. Um, I found that the lockdown really brought into sharp relief the kind of uh, boundary confusion that I was already experiencing as a professional. So I'd go into work and have to kind of play, participate in certain roles and attune my body in a very specific way that was so distinct from what I did at home when I was breastfeeding, and my body was undergoing all of these major changes hormonally. And when the lockdown happened, I found that those boundaries, those borders collapsed um, almost wholly. There just was, it felt like no separation. And with my child at home, and I was teaching via Zoom, and I was in meetings via Zoom, and my partner was sitting there on their computer nearby doing their work, because we were both privileged enough to work from home, or we were during this time. Um, but I also had, a child who demanded, um, who was nursing and who, right, I say demanded, in a loving way, but who really was attached to my body and had a relationship with my body that is, really powerful. And I think just in gestating, being a parent who gestated a child, and from what I've learned about childbirth, it's not just that the birthing parent's body is impacting and changing and shaping the child's body. The child's body is also changing the birthing parent's body while that child is in the womb at a molecular level. So I think there's a lot to think about in terms of boundaries, and that there being a kind of liminal space where subjecthood is a little bit blurry. And I was going to share a little anecdote about how, even prior to the COVID lockdowns, this collapse between boundaries of domestic space, of birthing parent, nursing parent, versus the college professor who's an artist and who teaches, those boundaries had really collapsed. And there was one moment that where that came into sharp relief, and when I rushed into the classroom after doing a pumping session, breast milk pumping session, and I was in a rush because it was between classes and I had this really tight schedule, and temporally, again, like coming back to boundaries, the temporal boundaries of how time works in a professional setting doesn't align, so often does not align with like what is going on biologically. But I had sort of burst into the room ready to teach, and my teaching assistant at the time, who was an incredible person, came over and very gently let me know that my shirt was on not only inside out but backwards. And they either very graciously didn't mention, or maybe they didn't notice that there also were wet spots, from lactation that were on my shirt as well. So that there was actual seepage leaking between these boundaries, temporally, professionally, in terms of roles, professional and maternal role, parental role, that I think is really interesting. All right. And so I want to just take a moment to honor Merle Lederman Euclides for all that she has done for artists, I think, and particularly women identifying artists and caretakers. She wrote, maybe folks are familiar with this, and if not, there's some videos of her actually speaking this manifesto, and it's brilliant and beautifully put. But she wrote this manifesto in 1969. It's a maintenance art manifesto, and I've only got 2 pages of it here. It's a little bit longer, but she talks, when she describes this, she talks about how for her, she was in New York City, a practicing artist. She had just gone through art school, and she had these ideas of art, of freedom, or having to do with freedom and having to do with agency. And then she became a mother, and she found that the the kind of lifestyle and roles that were associated with being a serious artist were at odds with being a caretaker. And folks probably, I imagine, and if you don't, you will probably be delighted to find out about her work in maintenance art, where this touch sanitation, for instance, when she shook hands with all of the sanitation workers in the city of New York, as a resident of the sanitation department. But so here's her care manifesto, and she does talk about, let's see, yeah, so like avant-garde art, which claims utter development, is infected by strains of maintenance ideas, maintenance activities, and maintenance materials. Process art especially claims pure development and change, yet employs almost purely maintenance processes. So she's, bringing these quiet acts of care that so many of us are engaged in, but that, that labor is typically invisible, and specifically in the context of the art world and what has been considered serious art. There's not often, I mean, I think this is changing, and I think depending on the circles you're in, we can find, like, for instance, with the WEAD artist, there's so much connection to the importance of care. But we still have a long way to go, I think, as a society in the United States. And maintenance and care work is not always taken seriously or given the level of respect that it really deserves. So the reason I'm talking about her, aside from how amazing she is as an artist, is here in Cambridge, we have a place called Danahy Park. And Merle Lederman Euclides created a public art project with Danahy Park. So this was constructed over a period of time. Her piece was constructed over the course of 3 years. And basically what she did is she was brought into this project. Oh, I should say, excuse me, Danahy Park was a garbage dump. And the city of Cambridge decided to reimagine it as a public park, and that's how it stands today. She was invited to come in and do some really incredible work. And for our purposes tonight, I'm sharing an in-process video of folks working on it. This is in 1997. The piece in the middle is this path that when you enter the park, you take this long winding path, and you go up, up, up this mound until you get to the top of the mound, and then you can encounter her piece called Turnaround Surround. And so you're on this hill and you can look and see the city of Cambridge. It's really breathtaking. But this path also contains something called glass fault, which Merle Lederman Euclides produced or organized the production of to for this park. And the glass also comes from it's discarded glass, so everything's been recycled into this piece. And here we go. And when you get to the top, there are two features here that she also has. There's something here in metal called Throne Room for the King and Queen of the Hill. And there's this other piece called Circles. And Circles is made out of rubber. It's recycled rubber. And she intended for it to be a space where people can come together and dance. And if you, if I'm using my mouse here, hopefully folks can see that, but from here, this is deceptive. This is actually a really large hill. It's a fairly steep hill. It goes down a few 100 feet, and then you get into the plants over here. There's a path here as well. All right. The reason I'm sharing this is because for me, I found that as a birthing parent, as a mother, trying to work full time as a professor, trying to be a parent, and also trying to find time or make time to have a so-called serious art practice was really hard, and it felt unattainable. I believe it is almost unattainable. It's not sustainable. And I have one day a week where at the time, I had one day a week where I could go and my partner and I take turns with the kids, and then we send the other one out and say, just go, like be alone, go for a walk, do something meditative. And I found that I kept coming back to this park because at the bottom of the hill, I met Merle Lederman Euclides through her glass fault path. I felt like I was communing with her, not in a literal way where she knows me and we're in relationship, but the power of her thinking is so comforting. I really found myself drawn to coming back to this, and it became a sort of meditative walk. By the time I got to the top, you wind around on this path of glass fault, and then you get to the top up here, and I'd sit down. Totally. Yeah, I'd sit down in the benches here and or stand on the circles, and I found that, let's get to this. Here's a view from the circles, and this is a video that does not need audio, so I'm just gonna talk through it. But I found that I would just go and spend 2 hours staring. But really, I was also crossing a sort of threshold, a border in my own mental and physical space. So I'd start the day, or I'd start my walk at this path with my mind and my body feeling sometimes overstimulated or at least hyper alert as a parent, especially in the early days when they were little. And this practice of walking along Merle's path really helped me mark a space of transition so I could leave some parts of myself as much as I could, or carry them with me, but kind of attune my body and my mind a little bit differently to the world that I'm a part of. And so sometimes I would sit and stare and I'd watch this. I'd watch the plants move, the waving plants. And on days that I felt like I could read, which is one of my, a deep pleasure for me, but it wasn't always available with, being a just with where I was with my mind and my body. So when I would read, I was really enjoying spending time with thinkers like Robin Wall Kimmerer, Donna Haraway, Anna Singh, Elvia Wilk more recently. But folks who are, I just named a people who are doing different things, but they're all thinking about ways that we can be that we can be with the natural world rather than just knowing it from an objective distance, from a cold distance, right? Right. Ways of having embodied experience and reciprocal experience. So that's kind of how some of these ideas started to shift for me. And then you'll see, so this is a small performance that I did in honor of Robin Wall Kimmerer and her ideas, but also a little bit of Donna Haraway's staying with the trouble mixed in with the tentacular thinking. But so I had a spool of handmade, a spool of fabric yarn that was from discarded clothing. And I walked through the crowd who was attending, folks in attendance, and just asked them to hold on to this yarn. It was sort of stretchy, so when you pulled it taut and could flick it, everyone felt the vibration. And I was really interested in finding a way where we could hold space together and be aware of our connectivity in a really visceral, tangible sense. And so I did that. I walked down one way and then I came back and stepped up and over and wove the ball through. So we kind of wove something together. And for me, this was sorry, I meant to add this was I had just read an essay by Robin Wall Kimmerer that was about the serviceberry, and this is prior to the serviceberry coming out. And I was really struck by one of her quotes, and I used it for this. I repeated that what happens to one happens to us all. All flourishing is mutual. And whoever edited her book was also really struck by that quote because that is the quote that ends up being the pull quote that's on the back cover of the book, which I really love. But this was a way that I was just kind of starting to think about reciprocity and interconnection and maybe moving a little further along. I'm also trying to make sense of disparate pieces of my art practice and connect them through these threads. All right, now we're going to talk about knotweed. So knotweed or Falopia japonica, Reinutria japonica. It's something that is often referred to as Japanese knotweed, but I prefer not to, like many people, prefer not to use that phrasing because of how the plant is spoken about, and I'll get into that in just a moment. It's considered a so-called invasive weed. It's very prevalent. If you've seen it, you might know it well. Once you see it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. This is one of my students shared this with me. This is a sprout coming up through their asphalt. And this person who is an amazing artist, y'all should look them up, Alina Balseiro, said that they had left their bicycle out, and when they came and they like went on vacation or they went out of town, when they came back, all of this had grown up. So this knotweed was not there like the week prior. So it grows very quickly. And it creates these stands that can be immersive, that you can go in. And that is now a part of my, if not daily, more realistically, it's a part of my weekly experience. I like to get into these stands. And so I've just got some images here of the plant at different times of the year. Here we have late summer when they start to blossom flowers. And you can see something I note, and I wrote about in my essay that's part of this, the gallery, is I noted how these plants reach. I think it's just really interesting and poetic how visually they're kind of reaching and sprawling at every stage of life. So this was actually early spring. So we see parts of the plant that had um, dried out over the winter, and these are the peduncles. So these are stems and peduncles where the flowers once were. And they have this really vibrant, deep, rich red carmine sort of color. And here is another image of the plants. I'm going to scoot us along here, and I'll just read a little bit of a description that I have. Just a little bit of my essay. And there's no audio, no need for audio for this. I'm just going to play it to have some knotweed to visualize, to see. So seasonal shifts are evident in the plant's structure and texture. Shoots may be woody or tender, their colors ranging from brown and green to vibrant fuchsia. Towering stalks bend heavily in the growing season, forming tunnels that frame movement and filter light. Broad green leaves resonate with summer sunlight, punctuated by sprays of tiny white flowers that spill effervescently outward. In later months, hollow stalks strike one another with percussive clacks, while deep, resonant hums thread through broken stems stirred by winter air. Knotweed grows in clusters, huddled and entangled, forming dense enclosures. Portals of overlapping stems allow passage into the tangled interior. These stands rise up in ecotones, urban margins where multiple ecosystems converge, sites of disturbance and flux that resist static equilibrium. In these liminal spaces, knotweed thrives where less resilient plants cannot, rooting and reaching in degraded soil, through polluted air, and along earth disrupted by human activity. These stands hold layers of multisensory information that require stillness and time to perceive. Oh, I didn't even have the video running, did I? My bad. It's okay. It's just as us go through and see different pieces of it. You can see the zigzag, which is a characteristic of the knotweed that I'm really fascinated by. All right, so about this plant, actually, I will talk a little bit about, I'm going to get more into it in a moment, but I don't want to belabor the points too much more. So here we have the roots. So it's a really pervasive plant. A lot of effort goes into cities, for instance, will organize removals, right? It's a so-called invasive species, and so it needs to be removed and discarded very carefully. And one of the things I was doing was working with this plant because there's just so much of it. So this is some root, and there's a piece of the root ball that I put in a bag, a sealed bag, plastic bag, and I put it in the refrigerator, and I let it sit for, it was about a week and a half. And when I came back, this on the right is what emerged from that. So it just is a really resilient plant. It seeks life. It moves toward life in really profound ways. But the root that we were just looking at became, here we have some ink. I've also worked with dye with the plant. And so these are some material investigations, some research where you can see how I've been working with it. Similarly, I have worked with paper. and found that there's a bunch, depending on the variables, depending on what you add or um, how you dry it. I mean, there's so many ways to work with this plant as a material, as a fiber. So here's some paper. This is also um, a bioplastic that I've experimented with, and I'm continuing to play with ways to create that. And then just some ink and graphite drawings and paintings. And the drawing and painting piece of this really, for me, is a space to listen and to notice, to pay attention to these qualities of the plant that um, are just a little bit that are, I feel like they so what I'm looking for, they sort of add to my experience of knowing the plant beyond being outside with the plant, in terms of like reciprocity and how I'm always kind of struggling with this idea of how I can work with the plant that I literally am extracting from the ground, in a way that exhibits care. But part of how I do that is I try to be attuned to it. I try to um, not take too much, like Robin Wall Kimmerer's suggestions for an honorable harvest, for instance. I try not to take too much. I try to listen. I move slowly. Um, I offer it attention. Right. So here we have, I don't know if Leela is still on the call. I know Leela was only able to pop in for a minute, but Leela, if you're here, this is printmaker Leela Seke, who is working with me now. We're working with the Audubon Society on an upcoming project, and we are trying to find a way to print with the ink in a printmaking capacity. So these are Leela's hands here, hard at work. And all right, now what have I got left for you? So we're gonna talk about this one project, and then we'll talk about the book that's in the exhibition, and then the teacher part of me is coming out, and then I'll send you on your way. Then we can be in dialogue a little bit. But here we have this is a project, Tangled Connections, Knotweed Resilience in Local Ecology. This is a project that I led and I worked with collaborators, Amy Myrtle, who is an insect ecologist, Nicole Weber, who is an environmental biologist and an artist, and then Romy Cattleson, who is a student of education. And we did some things you're going to see in a moment, but first, this is a typeface that I made from the plant. So one of the things we did is we started to harvest the stalks, the dried stalks. I'm actually in this building right now. I'm in my office, and this is our elevator. So you can see how massive these stalks can grow. And we presented, or we put these stalks into an installation, a sculptural installation, um, in Watertown, Massachusetts, very close by. Um, and what you can see is that we created a kind of trellis, a support structure with the denatured, I mean, they're dried out knotweed stalks, so they don't propagate. They're not going to keep growing and further destabilize ecosystems. They are supporting locally native plants in these planters. And this is an ecological relationship that doesn't happen naturally in this area, because the relationship that exists is that knotweed will destabilize the ecology, local ecology, to the point of um, making it impossible for other plants to grow, creates a monoculture. It is a situation that is a problem for diverse ecosystems. And so that's something we acknowledge with this project. But back to thinking about thresholds and boundaries. We have life and death here. We also have, the dead knotweed stalks with the living knotweed behind it. This is a big stand of knotweed. And the so-called invasive plants actually forming a structure for life for these locally native plants to grow. We had a native seed library. So these are pollinator seeds that the public could come and take. And we created this seed library with knotweed ink. And there's a little more information, visual information here about the typeface design. So I started with these, and my 6-year-old helped me with these, making the shapes of the alphabet out of the actual stalks. And then we photographed the stalks, and I digitized those and made an alphabet with them. And then we can see also how that kind of fed into some other pieces of the project. So you see the O became the native seed library. And then there's a part of this that is a community engagement, has a community engagement component. So we were really asking people in the public to talk with us about this plant, their associations with it, what they think about so-called invasive species, why they're here, what we should do about it. There's a lot of conversation that came up, and um, we tabled at 3 different events that were public facing, and then we had a couple of workshops for the public to come in and work. And at each of these events, we provided this ink made out of knotweed. You can see these stalks here as well that are made out of the stem of the knotweed. And we just invited them, in this case, you can see a table with a tablecloth, and we invited them to write down words and images that came up in our discussion. So as we prompted them with questions about, what do you know about knotweed? What's your relationship to it? And as really some of the prominent words that would come up, we'd ask them, could you write that down? And we heard a lot. We heard eradicate, a lot of militarized language, like at war with the roots. You can see some people also wrote about petrochemicals, thinking a little differently about this plant and its relationship to the environment, the fact that it's one of the only plants that can grow in really degraded soil. So we offered these really tactile, tangible ways to know this plant, or to try to experience and be with this plant a little bit differently. And just at the top, you can see that so I took the tablecloths that we made and with the public, and I cut them up and added in some dyed fabric that I'd also dyed from a different batch of knotweed dye. It gets this really gorgeous pink color, so you can see that. And then over here, we built a table. This table, the top of it is birch plywood, and it's in the form of a knotweed leaf, but the stalks down here are knotweed stalks. So we invited folks who were able to and who wanted to sit there at the table, look at a different installation of it. This time we decided to do something visually a little more bright and to celebrate or point to the vibrant pink that this plant has in the springtime. So here we've got the same setup. This time we have, I always really like to bring in paper. I've got a stack of it here. It's hard for me, speaking where I can't really see people. We're in this disembodied space right now. I really love to invite people to touch what I've brought, and so I wish I could. And I love to make little presents for you to take away. So that's what this is. These are bottles of pigment, dry pigment powder from the ink from this prevalent plant. The knotweed seed, or not knotweed seeds, the locally native wildflower seeds. I made a little knotweed zine about how to make your own ink if you wanted to. And then they could take the knotweed stalks with them. And over here we have a bunch of things for people to play with. People could touch and feel the paper. I made some stamps for them to, with that alphabet from the knotweed stalks for them to play with. We had other tables off camera where they had paper and they had ink and we invited them to draw. And then here in this box is the most exciting part of this entire project for me, is we were able to consume this this plant with other people in the public. We invited them to taste this with us, and Richie Chang is the lead chef at Osam Cafe in Watertown, and she agreed to come on board and work with us. And you can see on the left, or what you see on the left, is some foraged spring knotweed shoots that we gathered. And you can see this really vibrant, delicious red, purple bits of fuchsia in the spring shoot here in the middle. But we brought these in, and Richie Chang tried out a couple different recipes and made these beautiful pastries for us to share at our community engagement events. And so, back to our through line here of thinking about boundaries and borders. And I think one of the most intimate ways to be with another being in the world is through, right, the process of like eating. Like this is incredibly intimate, to smell, to eat, to have this become a part of you in this way. And then I always like to add that while knotweed is edible in the early spring and it is delicious, it tastes a little bit like rhubarb. Maybe folks here have done this before, but I encourage folks to just test the soil. We did do that. We tested soil at several sites, and we also tested the plant itself. You want to test the soil for any kind of heavy metals, and then the plant we tested for Roundup, because that tends to be used by organizations or for instance, like a Beaverbrook, which is DCR. What am I trying to say? The Park Service in Massachusetts uses Roundup as needed. So we just wanted to make sure that what we're consuming is not going to make anyone sick now or generations down the line. All right. Talking so much, but we're almost through, and with this portion, and then I would just love to hear from the folks out there. But so here was an important component of our project as well. As I mentioned, we had Amy Myrtle, who is an insect ecologist, works on our team, and she has already been deeply engaged in removing knotweed and purple loosestrife and other and Phragmites, other so-called invasive species or species of plants that really destabilize local ecologies. And so we decided, she led this. We created an iNaturalist citizen science opportunity to engage in this, where you could just survey Watertown. So anytime you see knotweed, if anyone's in Watertown, I mean, really, this is a global organization. I can't say organization, or I can't say .org anymore after hearing Beth Stevens and Annie Sprinkle at an earlier WEAD talk. Beth, in case any of you weren't there, Beth Stevens, every time she said .org, she said .org like orgasm, which is just so funny and wonderful to me. So I want to like use that. But anyway, so anywhere that you're uploading images of plants in the world, you can add to your findings are added to a map. And so we just created a really specific one in Watertown where it's a project. And there are organizations in Watertown that that work with that organize removals of this plant. So in this way, we are also trying to trying to support local ecosystems. We're kind of holding two truths, centering two truths. Like one is that this plant does in fact cause monocultures. It's not helpful for local ecologies, but on the other hand, we have a lot that we can learn from it. And these are just the paintings that I did that went into that iNaturalist um, flyer that you saw. Okay, and this brings us to the piece that's in this exhibition, Attending Knotweed. So it's an artist's book, an essay with knotweed ink drawings. I read a little bit from the essay earlier. This is laser engraved into knotweed paper. So this is another form of the knotweed paper. The images and text are laser engraved, and then I went back into the images and painted with a knotweed ink. And just a little bit about the process so you can see what it looks like to laser engrave. It was really a wild experience to put so much work into, building the essay, making the paper, being out, not even to mention being outside and in the space of a knotweed stand and harvesting the material that was used in the paper, making these drawings. And then you just press a button or you press several buttons and then you let the machine take over and you just stand and watch and it burns into this. It was, I mean, I guess it's the same kind of process with printing, but it just, it was such a remarkable shift. It was jarring. And so here it is again. You can see how I had these really high contrast graphic images of animals that I was finding in the knotweed stands, and then I went back in and painted over them. All right, so I have talked about knotweed. Some of the questions that we were raising in this project, the group project that I shared a moment ago, and part of a lot of what I'm thinking about with this is just how there is such negative perception around this plant, and the language that is used to describe this plant is so often militaristic. It's like war rhetoric, and it really is kind of missing the point. I think it's fascinating that we blame so much on this plant for destabilizing ecosystems when really, I'm quoting Kate Sandilands here, who's one of my favorite thinkers, queer theorist as well. She talks about how it's not so much, she says that it's a problem with, the problem is an extractive and invasive land ethic. It's not the plant itself. And so I just think that that gets lost on a lot of us. And so it's something that I'm really sitting with and thinking about with these projects. Back to our thread line of thresholds as well. I was spending a lot of time in ecotones, right? Because that's where these plants really grow. They flourish in spaces between the built world and more natural environments. So you'll see them on the sides of roads, on the sides of railroad tracks, all around railroad tracks, and in these spaces that are themselves in betweens that are liminal. And then I was spending a lot of time in them and noticing that as I would look around, I would have something that, I don't know if she's here, Jane Marshing, a really brilliant artist who I'm lucky and privileged to know, had described an ambient perspective. How, like, when you're looking at something like a forest floor and there's so much visual material and information for you to see that it's only through really sitting with that and through attention and stillness that you can start to see everything. or not even everything. You can just you can start to see it a little bit more. And so I was finding that I'd be in the space of the knotweed stand, harvesting or just being with, smelling it, and I would realize I've been standing with a bunny whose body is decomposing, right, and becoming nutrients in the soil. And so that's what these are. All of the images in this book are decomposing animals that I was I felt really lucky to be witness to. And all of them were like really hidden, and I had to spend time. It was only through that, as I said, that time and attention that they became. I feel like they shared themselves with me, or that I was able to see them. Um, Rot is food, and bodies and ecosystems are intertwined and continually transforming. So the book and the project is really ongoing. I'm spending time with knotweed. I'm learning a lot from the plant and from other artists and thinkers about how to spend time or how to learn how to be with. And I think it's Stacey Alima who talks about like with the new materialists and how they propose an onto epistemological approach to knowing rather than just in classical Western thought, the epistemological approach, right? Which is like from a distance, a cold distance where there's a hierarchy there, there's domination of what we're seeing. Um, the onto epistemological approach is about being with, finding a way to be and to know. And so we're indebted to indigenous wisdom and folks who are sharing indigenous wisdom. And, you know, I love some of the new materialist thinkers and post humanist thinkers, but I'm constantly learning. Um, I made a zine version of it just to kind of get it out, distribute it a little bit more. And we tabled at the Zine Fest recently. So here you can see just another imagining of the same piece. And there we were able to, this is back with the group Tangled Connections. We made the sculpture together, which is down the street from where the site is. So at the Zine Fest, we led a walk. We walked people to the sculpture. I also had all these papers out. These are the knotweed reed pens and the knotweed ink we invited people to play with. And then these are just some different zines that I made to get us thinking about knotweed a little bit differently. And I just included this in here. This is one where I had pulled each of these headlines were in these images were a part of publications describing knotweed specifically in the United States and in the UK. And I just think it's really telling, you know, the way that we use language to discuss these plants. Oops. Oh, yes, good. And then up here is the Kate Sandilands quote. So, getting rid of so-called invasive plants without thinking about the relationships that brought those plants to North America is like treating the symptom and not the cause. The problem, and this is what I was referring to earlier, the problem is the invasive land ethic that comes along with settler colonialism, rather than the presence or absence of any particular invasive plant. So, just thinking about how it's not the plant, it's really these you know, racial capitalism, legacies of settler colonialism and petrochemicals in our soil. And so if we can think differently about how we frame this plant, I think it would be a good thing. It's another zine of knotweed at a site of an ecotone. There's the train going through it. And I just want to come back to this thread line, the through line of thresholds and liminal spaces. I don't know if I mentioned that with my book, I really critical part of it for me is how I find something, I find myself really held and kind of entangled with liminal spaces like ecotones, and specifically as a person. I'm not a monosexual person. I identify as bi plus, right, under that big umbrella. And so um, ways of presentation, like how romance and sexual relationships are presented in the overcultures in the United States, I feel really at odds with, and I find that that so I write about how identifying as queer in this specific in this way um, feels really in line with I'm feeling some relationship with these ecotones, like we're kind of both and but we're also neither, and there's a lot of seepage that happens between um, borders and boundaries. So these are some sketches. As I mentioned, drawing is an important way of practicing attention for me, and so much of my practice right now is about attention as method and observing, knowing, being with the knotweed. And then this is my last one. I'll end with. So this image depicts the forest floor within a knotweed stand. I call it knotweed heap. I'm interested in kind of like composting of animals and plants, how it's all intertwined. We're all intertwined together. Knotweed ink seeps throughout the scene. So you can see the knotweed ink. So thinking about permeability and care and agency and cycles of decay here, but also life and regeneration. And then I will end it there. How we doing on time? I'm going to open this back up. Should I stop the share?
Yeah, that would be great. And thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for this. Oh my gosh. I was loving when you're bringing in acts of labor and visibility of acts of care and labor in our society, especially. Um, I also studied Meryl Letterman's work, so I was like, yes.
I love it.
100%. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your work and going into depth about the type of care that you also employ in your work, and how that shapes how you're approaching these topics. I think that this creates for me anyway, like such a dynamic that like your work really unfolds into it in a way that feels authentic and also just powerful. So thank you. Um, and yeah, thank you for bringing up like the active labor and how that can be like invisible. Um, and also the different forms of that tending and care that can entangle us politically, emotionally, too, physiologically. Um, and then, yeah, I just want to open it up before I go on a whole tangent. I want to open it up. I want to thank you. I want to thank our audience that is tuning in tonight and open it up to some Q&A and some dialogue. You're welcome to raise your hands, turn your cameras on, put things in the chat, whatever feels most natural for you. Um, yeah, so let's transition into like giving taking a few questions for Leah, and then we'll close out. Thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for sticking around throughout the the long talk.
Oh, I think that a lot of the talks have gone long, which is great.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad you answered Maggie's question too in the chat. I know Maggie had to pop out.
Yeah, I tried to be in there. Annie Robinson. Okay, percolating on the quote you mentioned from Kate Sindlin, SP. Can you share that resource, please? Okay.
Yes. um, Catriona, or like if you look up Catriona Sandylands, she has one of my favorite texts by her. Well, it's a compilation of essays that she edited, but she has an
Mhm.
essay in there called Queer Ecologies, Catriona Sandylands or Kate Sandylands. Um, you're welcome.
How did you run across her work? Like, what did how did you come across that? Because I feel like for me it was a lot of like deep sideline research sometimes when I would run across people, but
That I love that. Yes, that is definitely happening. You know, I I learned about where did I learn about queer ecologies? I think I've been interested in art that deals with the natural world, and that led me to learning about queer ecologies as a term. And then I started just digging in a little bit deeper, and she is someone that came up, and now I share her work with my students. So she's anyway, she's yeah, probably through queer ecologies just because of that phrase, because I was kind of like, wait, what? And then I'm reading about it and I'm like, oh, I really see myself in this. And also Stacey Alimo is a really wonderful thinker that I think connects so beautifully. Oh, I see a JSTOR link. It's
I was like, oh, sorry, that's me.
great. I love it.
I
It's
was
great.
like, here it is if you guys want it. Um, awesome, yeah. Any other questions from the group? Also, do I need to give access or are you guys unable to chime in?
Hi,
Crystal.
hi, Leah and Leah.
Hi.
Thank you. This was so fascinating, and I really appreciate learning in depth about your work, and really want to know more. And also thought you might be really interested to know that I've been working with uh, Newtown Creek, a Superfund site in New York City,
Wow.
that divides Brooklyn and Queens. Speaking of borders.
Yeah.
And I work with researchers and scientists who are supporting remediative mussels. The native mussel, the mussels native to the creek filter some of the contaminants in this very, very damaged body of water. And because it's a Superfund site, you can't like make a permanent structure
Mm.
to like, but it's really hard to like make a wetlands or even like some kind of structure there, but just because there's so much involved in that. So they're using um, floating mechanisms, and they've been using shipping pallets and like having mussels and cordgrass, which are their plant partners, um, to grow together, and that's been going okay, so. And now they're looking for. They've been using different types of bottles to keep these things floating, and they're using knotweed as a flotation
Oh my goodness.
mechanism. I haven't been very involved with this, so I'm not sure how it's working out. But
Yeah,
I can check with them and see, because I thought you might find that interesting as another
I do. Thank you so much.
of
That's
not.
amazing. Do you know if it Maxwell Fertig is a researcher and artist who was in Providence and was doing work creating
Oh,
flotation devices with knotweed. So I wonder.
oh, wait, was it? Do you know Holly Ewald, another artist in Providence, but I think also works in Massachusetts? Because I think Holly Ewald.
Okay.
I think Holly might have been involved with a group of people that were doing this, and that might have been where
Yeah, that.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about this. Also, I'd love to exchange zines with you. I only have one zine.
Oh,
I'm a one zine, one wonder, but it's about a mussel that lives at the creek.
oh, that's so
Called Tales
wonderful.
from the Creek: The Adventures of Mo Mussel.
That's incredible. I love that. Thank you. Yes, I'd love to
It's
be
a
in
mini
touch.
comic, actually. But yeah, I'd love to see your zines. Do
Thank
it.
you so much. It's
Thank
wonderful.
you. This was great.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. I think I put like I don't know if it was specific, but I did put the I think I put the super fun sites that are located in that region in
Yeah,
the chat.
awesome.
And then also there is this when you guys were talking just now, it made me think of these living sculpture projects that are to be like helping the watershed banks. I put that in the chat too because
Oh,
I
that's
was like,
beautiful.
I
Thank
wouldn't
you.
There
be
are
like,
also some indigenous practices which use floating gardens, like Aztec, I believe, that some of this work is based into. If it's okay, I can put a link to my project, which is called Sludge, in the chat.
Thank you.
yeah, please do. I think it's great when we can share projects, books, articles. Yeah. Um, any
And
other?
not, oh, not weed can, there, there is testing happening around knotweed as a phytoremediator, or like it can remediate air in some ways. So like in really urban spaces where like at the in the hill strips where nothing else can grow, where knotweed is, the air apparently they're able to filter and clean the air to some degree. Um, but then it gets really complicated because it's like, well, what do we do with that? And I don't know, there's more out there, but I think that's really interesting when we have um, yeah, we have these the mussels or the plants that are actually helping to clean and filter, and so I love that the idea of also knotweed holding these two spaces of being considered dangerous, to ecosystems, destabilizing, but also remediating and kind of recycling and actually it's here because of settler colonialism. It's here because of being brought over by botanists in the late 1800s to study, and also because it was considered a beautiful ornamental. So it was here because of Western human, fallacy. It's not at fault, but it's also like helping in some ways, right? Like cleaning the air. The petrochemicals are helping it spread, but it's also helping to like suck out some of the petrochemicals from our soil and air. So this just, I think that is, I'm fascinated with that sort of thing. So, thanks for geeking out with me. It's so fun to talk about weeds and
I was
mussels
like, you
and
probably would like the work that Daniel McCormick and Mary O'Brien do, because it's working with like plants and also like environmental intersections. I'm gonna put their stuff in there
thank you.
in the chat. Yeah. You like.
Amazing. Thank you.
I think they do a lot of work on like elderberry, willow, and other species that can interact in the way that knotweed does, and kind of that art and environment intersection. Um,
Thank you.
from weed. Oh, yes, Mary, they are working on restoring native oysters too. hmm Any other thoughts, questions, comments before we close out? anything as well from our WEAD attendant members as well? Okay. Well, I will also say I could talk to you about this a long time, Leah. So I'm always here if we want to chat or collaborate. This is
Sounds great.
fun work you're doing and important work at the same time, which is, I think, living in the play is something that's really hard to do, especially as artists, when we do have focus on socio-political or environmentally political charged, taxing but necessary conversations. And I think keeping that element of like play in there is so important. Um, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm like already excited, like where your future projects are going and stuff. So
Thank you. I look forward to being in more conversation, and I love everything that you've contributed. And I'd love to pick your brain some more as well, because it sounds like you have a wealth of um, knowledge and dedicated study that
I, it's
ties in
been
with that.
really um, fruitful to see people coming into the gallery, how they interact with your piece, um, and asking questions. And yeah, it's opened up some really interesting conversation. And so I really want to thank you for that. And a lot of, I've gotten feedback from just my community members, but also from artists in my network regionally. And I think for us artists, it's also like learning from voices outside of just our community. That's important, but like it means a lot to have your work in conversation. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, I put in the link if anyone wants to see. Of course, check on our WEAD website on the 109 Gallery website, but I have photos from the exhibition up, also on social media I've been sharing. And if you haven't check out the full online gallery as well. And thank you again. Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Leah. Thank you for everyone that came tonight. Um, and we have
Yeah,
it recorded so we can share this later as well.
great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I just echo Leah's thank yous. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Mary and Leah, for making this happen. And